Hi, Dave Roscoe here. It is Monday, November 3rd, 2025, and I hope you all had a good weekend. I know I did. Had a Halloween party on Saturday, and for anybody who's interested, my costume was Cousin Eddie from National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and I thought the costume was quite well done. And we had a lot of fun. We always go to a party every year, and this year they brought back the karaoke, which was nice. I definitely participated in that. If some of you don't know, one of my passions is singing. Halloween was last Friday, October 31st, here in the United States. I don't know how many other places celebrate Halloween. I know in like South America, they have Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, which coincides close to Halloween, but it has a quite different connotation than the pagan-based Halloween holiday. And I like Halloween. I go out with my kids. And like I said, I always dress in costume for the annual party. Daylight savings came in over the weekend. Again, I don't know how prevalent daylight savings or daylight whatever, because like daylight savings actually just ended because our clocks went back an hour, which I like. I like when it goes back an hour because I got to tell you, waking up in pitch darkness is kind of depressing, especially when it takes like a good hour for the sunrise to come. And now we're at a point where setting the clocks back gives us an earlier sunrise, and you wake up and it's not so dark. But it's dark by like 4 or 5 p.m. in the evening, so that's kind of weird. But there's been talk about getting rid of it, and I don't know where that stands. And I know some places don't even have it. So if you're looking at me like, what the hell's Dave talking about? Then this doesn't apply to you. There's not much going on. The only thing of note has been the somewhat erratic behavior of the Pi coin price, but I don't want to talk about the Pi coin price. It's not important. Current price is right behind me here, 23 cents. At what point last week it was almost up to 30 cents. And great. And I don't know what else to say about it. But there's been no news coming out from the Pi Core team, no new partnerships. And most of what you see are rumors and about the ISO 20022, which is, really a non-issue. So not much to talk about. I do want to talk about the conclusion of the Alpha Arena by N of 1, which was the trading experiment that was done, pitting all of the major LLMs, against the crypto markets. That ended today at 5 p.m. Eastern time. So we'll take a look at that and see what the results were. I was quite surprised. I suppose I shouldn't have been, but you'll see what I'm talking about. But first, let's talk about the metrics. The circulating supply is 8.29 billion Pi, and there were no user accounts migrated yesterday. There's currently 15.9 million Pi in the Pi migration wallet, and migrations are not happening now. Migrations were happening pretty steadily, albeit at a reduced pace for quite a while, but now they've stopped and don't know when they'll resume again. The migrated unlocked rewards are at 3.21 billion Pi, with 12.4 million Pi unlocked since last Thursday, and now free to be traded on the open markets. That's probably averaging about 3.1 million Pi per day on average, which is about what we've been seeing lately. So let's take a look at the results of the Alpha Arena by N of 1. Now, as you can see, the contest is over. If we take a look at the README here, if you take a look here, it says that it would end on November 3rd at 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you take a look at the model chat, you'll see that the last entries were right around 4:59-ish. And that was it. Nothing else happened since then. And let's take a look at the final results. Now, the control here was buying Bitcoin and just holding it. And if you take a look at this here, you started out with $10,000 and you bought Bitcoin and you just held on to it. At the end of this period of time, you lost $6. And you can see this dotted line right here that the price was just pretty much holding steady right there and no movement. And then around it are the performance of all the models. And as you can see here, Gemini and ChatGPT did not do well. They were poor performers right from the beginning, but then kind of settled down into their poor performance and held that for the remainder of the time. Now, I thought they might go to zero, but that didn't happen. But still, poor performance. And then you had Grok. At one time, Grok was doing great right over here, right? We had a high of 15,000. So they had gained quite a bit over their initial $10,000 investment. But then it fell victim to whatever trap caught some of the other models, but didn't recover. Now, you can see here, it's pretty funny what you notice. And this, I'll talk about what I think the verdict here is. But it never recovered its performance. At one point, it was keeping up with DeepSeek, and then it just lost it. And then DeepSeek kept going on pretty strong. But then you had Claude, and Claude was doing okay, kind of going fluctuating in and out around the median of 10,000, and then just kind of lost it, gave up, I guess. I don't know. DeepSeek, at one point, they had gotten up to 23,000, more than doubled their initial investment. Okay. And then lost it all to end up pretty much right about 10,000. The only one now was Quen 3, which for a while was keeping up with DeepSeek, and then managed to hold on at the end and win out of all of them with a gain of, I don't know, let's see, $2,200 over the initial investment. Now, you could call that a success, I guess. I don't know. It's not much better than if you had just bought Bitcoin and held on to it. And look at all of this, chaos to get there. Yeah, I don't know if I'd have the intestinal fortitude to watch this. But I want to point out a few things here. Take a look at the similarities in the patterns that you'll see in some of these cases. For example, for a while, DeepSeek and Grok were almost right on top of each other. You can see the lines overlap. And then when Grok fell off, you could see that DeepSeek and Quen 3 were keeping up with each other, but not following the same pattern until you get to here, right? And then they pretty much mirror each other's behaviors. That's very bizarre, okay? And then you get to here, right? And you got Claude and Grok very closely mirroring each other's behavior. And same thing here. And then you have Gemini and ChatGPT mirroring their behavior very, very closely. And here's my verdict. And this is the reason why I don't trade crypto. This experiment was based on technical analysis. And with technical analysis, you don't really know anything about what's driving the price action. All you know is that certain indicators are supposed to indicate what the market sentiment is doing, where the price is tending to go, where the pressures are. Are they pushing up? Are they pushing down? What's going to happen? What are the targets? Okay. And it's all done by reading the performance of the charts. They're not looking at board of stakeholder meetings or profit reports or anything like that. This is just crypto, and this is based on trading behavior. It's called technical analysis. And I've never been a fan of it because to me, it sounds like voodoo. And this kind of agrees with me. As you can see, the technical analysis told these algorithms that the price was going to do something and then either reversed sharply or just didn't follow what they wanted. I mean, look at these giant dips right here, right? You got this big rise, okay? And then you got this giant dip, completely erasing this rise, right? And then you have here, right? All of these models were interpreting the data the same way and then fell trap to the same pitfall that caused them to lose. And you see a repeating pattern of where these assumptions brought them. And now this doesn't necessarily mean that technical trading is useless. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that whoever set the parameters for this particular season did it in such a way that all of these models, based on their reasoning, had some vulnerability to the markets, right? Their technical analysis was flawed in some way based on the inputs that were given to them. And what I'm seeing here is that these LLMs did not perform any better than a human trader. It was all automated. Well, even that's not true, because I'll tell you what happened here. These large language models tend to lose their context, meaning that they forget what they started doing in the first place after they run for a certain amount of time. To combat that, the program running this experiment would continuously give updated prompts explaining to each language model what it is they were doing, what the key indicators were for each of the cryptos that they were trading, and whatever parameters were needed to help them with their technical analysis. And that was given to them on a regular periodic basis so that the LLMs never lost context of what they were doing. Now that's a lot of work. So we're a long way off from just telling an AI, hey, here's this bot, you just trade for me and keep me in the loop. No, what would happen is after less than a day, that bot would be AI bot would be hopelessly lost and making stupid decisions all over the place. So it's very hands-on, and it's just indicative of the state of the current art with this technology. So you don't see that because it's kind of hidden, but if you go to the model chat and expand it, you see what their thoughts are, right? But then, like for example, you can see all of the user prompts. These are the prompts. Now, this is the data that it's given, right? For each one. And they're all given the same exact data. In theory, that should result in similar outputs or whatever. And then the chain of thought, which tells you in detail what each AI was thinking when it made its decisions. And this just kept repeating, right? You'd get your prompt, your key metrics, and then the AI would just run. So, you don't see that happening here, but that was all happening behind the scenes. And you could see it if you dug deeper. It's really quite fascinating. So what is the verdict? Well, the verdict is that technical trading is dubious as a means for determining the value of what a crypto is going to do. And there isn't a lot of legitimate information out there to give you any clue about what's going to happen. Yeah, the crypto markets tend to follow the financial markets just because crypto is largely speculative and people's tolerance for risk will be reflected in the current state of the markets. So you'll see that correlation. That's true. But aside from that, you never really know what's going to happen. And you can use technical analysis to try to ride these peaks and these dips. But it takes a really keen eye to be able to do this well and do this well consistently. Because, from my opinion, a lot of this is just hit or miss. You're rolling the dice. In other words, gambling. And when you're gambling, the only real winner are the exchanges and the whales. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't want this to be an indictment of technical trading, because I know there are a lot of people out there that'll tell me, Dave, you're full of crap. Technical trading is awesome. They just don't know what they're doing. And that may very well be true. And they are limited here in that whatever they were using for their technical analysis was limited by what was included in the prompts. And different traders have different things that they look at. And what works for some may not work for others. It all depends on what their strategy is. So I will give you that. Like I said, it's not an indictment of technical analysis, but what the results clearly show is that the AIs followed similar patterns using the same data based on that technical analysis, and they all rose or fell in lockstep with that data, which was very interesting. Now, not consistently, but in periods, it followed very closely, which I thought was fascinating. Anyway, I'm going on and on about this, and some of you may not care, but I thought this was a really interesting experiment. And this is season 1, so they are going to do more of these, and I'm going to follow them because it'll be interesting to see how this improves. Because I do see a future where AI-controlled bots are doing most of our trading. Well, that's all I've got for today. If anything breaks, I'll be sure to hop on here and let you know. But until then, don't panic, stay the course, and remember, the success of the Pi Network begins with you. Pi to the moon. Peace.